When the state are telling doctors that they can't do any doctoring, has misinformation gotten out of control? Hello, you 5.5 million awakening wonders. See how we grow. If you're not subscribing yet, subscribe right now and join us on this journey to the light. Not like, the light, the tunnel of light, you're going to die. No, living light. That's what it means. Die unto thyself, that you may live freely. Free yourself of the tyranny of systems, inner and outer, whether it's the ego or the tyrannical systems that want to hypnotize you and control you. You know what I'm talking about. We're doing a story today about California State and how they're preventing doctors, I think, from being candid and transparent with their patients so that they don't accidentally do a misinformation. Hey, if you want to come and see me live, there's a link in the description so you can get tickets if you want to come. And if you want to attend a unique one-day event with me and Wim Hof live, go and sign up to my mailing list. There'll be a link to that at the end of this video. Join my mailing list. I communicate with you directly. What I won't be doing is lying through the teeth to you just in order to fit in with California State's latest edicts. Let's see what's going on. In California, work is underway by lawmakers described by some as Orwellian. I've read him, 1984, the one where the pigs go naughty, to push two new COVID bills, one that would deal with misinformation around the epidemic and the virus coming from doctors, and another whose goal is to promote censorship by internet platforms. One of the proposed bills quotes unnamed major news outlets who have concluded that the most dangerous spreaders of COVID misinformation are healthcare professionals. That's who we got to clamp down on. Doctors, nurses, they've been ruining this COVID pandemic. If we could just get rid of all doctors and nurses, we'd be able to solve this bloody COVID misinformation crisis a lot more quickly. Another thing that the bill aims to stop is doctors telling their patients that if they have acquired natural immunity, they don't need to get the vaccine as well. So I've acquired natural immunity. Do I need to get the vaccine as well? It used to be I just couldn't understand your handwriting. Now I can't understand your talking. There's a joke from 1980 for you. Once again today we'll be citing Jay Bhattacharya, that old hack from Stanford University, that wacky old conspiracy theorist down at Stanford School of Medicine. If you go down to Stanford or Harvard or Yale or any of those places, you can barely hear anything from the crunching of the tinfoil hats. Professor Jay Bhattacharya says, a proposed California law threatens to make such dissent career-ending by handing the state the power to strip medical licenses from doctors who disagree with government positions on COVID. We've done a few videos lately, haven't we, that's shown you how politicians seek to use, manipulate, metastasize scientific data towards political ends. According to the California Assembly Bill 2098, physicians who deviate from an authorized set of beliefs would do so at risk to their medical license. The idea that you could have rogue doctors doing crazy stuff is something that should be, I suppose, observed. But it seems like this bill, according to Professor Bhattacharya here, is not about controlling maverick doctors that might want to chop off your hand and replace it with a foot to see if it all works out, but in fact to control the flow of scientific discourse. The bill, written by Assemblyman Evan Lowe, a Democrat in Silicon Valley and currently making its way through the California legislature, is motivated by the idea that practicing doctors are spreading misinformation about the risks of COVID, its treatment and the COVID vaccine. Ugh, you doctors. I remember when it was just conspiracy theorists out there, but those conspiracy theorists, so manipulative, they've managed to turn themselves into doctors on the side. It declares that physicians and surgeons who disseminate or promote misinformation or disinformation related to COVID-19, including false or misleading information. Who's false? Who's misleading? This is the problem that we're faced with these days, isn't it? Because some people are deciding what's false and misleading, and often what's false and misleading is stuff that's like affects their top line, their bottom line, affects their ability to make profit, control discourse, control public conversation. We, ordinary folk, we query whether or not it really is false and misinformation, or if it's just not bloody convenient to their aims, agenda, objectives. False or misleading information regarding the nature and risks of the virus, its prevention and treatment, and the development, safety and effectiveness of COVID-19 vaccines. One thing we can see from what's going on in China is you don't want more control, regulation and legislation. First of all, we don't want people on the internet saying stuff. No, it's doctors and physicians. Let's be honest, there's a spectrum of belief, isn't there, around COVID and vaccines? There's some people think, the whole thing was made up. I don't want to get a vaccine under any circumstances. Where other people say, this is no serious thing that's ever happened. Get vaccines, get boosters, get whatever. And do you know what? I think it's up to you where you stand on that scale and what my opinion is and what the people I work with's opinion is. That's all our own deal. What if though, a doctor who says, oh, natural immunity or hybrid immunity is best on one day, and the government, like, they're not into it that week, go, you're fired, you're sacked. Well, you're going to give him or her their job back, like in a month, when it's like, oh, actually, you're right about that. Sorry we sacked you about the old hybrid immunity. The situation is constantly evolving. In a situation that's evolving, where there is no certainty, where there can only really be guiding principles, like, freedom of speech, honest and open communication, trust scientific data, allow opposing views to come together to, in collusion, create truths that will necessarily be complex because it is an evolving situation. When you have something like that, you cannot lean into the tyranny. You can't start sacking medical professionals who have sworn an oath to do what's best for their patients, who may err because they are, after all, human, but are in caring professions. I don't want that power given to the state. I want that power to remain in the hands of scientists, medics, professionals. It don't matter where you are on your own particular journey around COVID and its treatment. What matters is that we can all communicate with one another and agree that tyranny is not the answer. She'll be subject to disciplinary action, which could result in the loss of the doctor's medical licence. The language of the bill itself is intentionally vague about what constitutes misinformation, which makes it even more damaging. Doctors, fearing loss of their livelihoods, will need to hew closely to the government line on COVID science and policy, even if that line does not track the scientific evidence. Oh, I see, that's how you get compliance. You be vague about what the rules are, you state what the government imperative is, and then people will be so nervous and scared that they'll just parrot that opinion. That switches people off. That turns us into automatons. No one knows what they're supposed to be saying, so we sort of just drift into a kind of state of default hypnosis. After all, until recently, top government science bureaucrats like Dr. Fauci claimed that the idea that COVID came from a Wuhan laboratory was a conspiracy theory rather than a valid hypothesis that should be open to discussion. So there you go. There's one clear example of the changing narrative. The government's track record on discerning COVID truths is poor. All right, so you're certain that what you've got now is the truth. We're absolutely certain of it. How's your track record on discerning truths? I'm not going to tell you that. That's private. You're not even allowed to ask that question. That question was misinformation. The bill claims that the spread of misinformation by physicians about the COVID vaccines has weakened public confidence and placed lives at serious risk. That's not the misinformation, that's the changing narrative. That's like someone whose dog doesn't trust them because they've kicked their dog, trying to solve their dog's distrust by kicking the dog harder. But how significant is this problem in reality? Over 83% of Californians over the age of 50 are fully vaccinated, including the booster. What is abundantly clear is that the bill represents a chilling interference with the practice of medicine. The bill itself is full of misinformation. Oh no, the actual bill! One thing we must do is stamp out misinformation so that all the kangaroos in California can form orderly queues around the block. We don't have kangaroos in California and they would never form orderly lines under any circumstances. Shut up! Shut up! Full of misinformation and a demonstration of what a disaster it would be to have the legislature dictate the practice of medicine. Yeah, like let it be its own thing. Stop trying to suppress everything into models of convenience and oppression. If this bill passes, would a California physician be in trouble for taking into account a patient's COVID history when making vaccine recommendations? Another statement in the bill's preamble asserts that the safety and efficacy of COVID vaccines have been confirmed through evaluation by the Federal Food and Drug Administration, the FDA. Let's just quickly check who funds it. I'd like to tell you who funds the FDA, but it might be misinformation. If you want to know more about the FDA, we've done a couple of videos, we'll throw to them at the end. The bill directs the California State Licensing Board to impose disciplinary penalties which could result in the loss of a medical license on physicians who disseminate misinformation. A loss of license would be career-ending for doctors who spend their lives caring for patients. One thing we want to do right now is get rid of doctors, shut down doctors, ruin the confidence of medical professionals. Have less doctors. One of the things I was thinking throughout the pandemic is there's too many bloody doctors and we can't trust the ones we have got. But since the examples cited in the bill are themselves misleading, even physicians who practice medicine responsibly or give public presentations grounded in solid scientific research on the evolving COVID science may face unjust license suspensions. I bet some of you have had things where you've been banned off social media for saying stuff in the past that now is legit, right? Let me know in the comments below if that's happened to you. So that shows you the danger of having a kind of a certain and all-encompassing edict around an evolving situation. I'm continually saying to you, we need values that we can rely on, like, kindness, service, community, compassion, piety, listening, all sorts of stuff like that. You've probably got your own set. We do need, though, some moral values that are somewhat permanent. But among that must be the ability to adapt and evolve that's not continually guided by the North Star of tyranny and corruption. You know what it is. You know it's behind all this stuff. Increase power and increase the influence and ability of the powerful to control outcomes. The ultimate effect of the bill will be to chill public criticism by California doctors of mistaken government public health dictates, since few will want to put their licenses in the hands of the very public health officials with whom they disagree over the interpretation of science. Even legitimate dissent from public health orthodoxy by licensed doctors may be excised from the public square as a consequence. Can their agenda really be to create more trust? Because if it is, you wouldn't sack a trusted family doctor of many years' service for doing what they believe to be best for their patients and possibly replace them with what? An obedient little robot? I was beginning to feel some mistrust in the state because of many things that have happened in the last few years, but since they got rid of my beloved family doctor, good old Dr. Chalkley, and replaced her with the COVID bot 2000, I feel a lot more trust. Thank you for visiting. Here is your new spate of injections. What injections? Shut up! Worse, the widespread distrust Americans now have in public health institutions will only deteriorate further. And that's to say nothing of the impact this bill would have on the practice of medicine, which I would have thought should be a priority. Doctors have an obligation to treat each patient as an individual. Yet the California Assembly Bill turns doctors into agents of state public health rather than advocates for their patients. Wow, what a brilliant observation. Suddenly now, their priority is not caring for the individuals, but operating under the edicts of the state. How fantastic. Can you see how that could play out in other situations? Let's forget the temporal nature of the panic around the last couple of years and concentrate instead on legislation and regulation introduced during this period and how its application may alter throughout time. Generally, I suppose we could ask ourselves, does this increase authority? Does this increase the ability of the state to control individual lives and the lives of whole communities? And when the answer to that is yes, I don't think it's a good thing. So even if, say, with something like Canada and the truckers, even if you think, I don't like them truckers, look at them with their hats and their beards. If the underlying issue is sort of freedom of speech and the ability to protest against the government, what if next time it's, like little children or something? It could change all the time. The principle. Keep your eye on the principle. History provides abundant examples of what happens when the state regulates science. In the former Soviet Union, Stalin's favourite geneticist, Trofim Lysenko, dominated biology and the agricultural sciences. Lysenko rejected Mendelian genetics in favour of his own theory that plants could inherit acquired characteristics. Do you have any evidence of this? No, I don't have any evidence, it's just my theory. Well, you are my favourite. Carry on. Stalin empowered him to destroy the careers and lives of geneticists who opposed him, causing many to suffer secret arrests and even death. Hey, I don't agree with this thing that plants can inherit characteristics. Oh yeah? Argue with that! When his theories failed, embarrassing, the consequence was mass starvation in Russia. Can I have a word with you about those theories? Mr. Stalin, I can see that you're angry. 30 million deaths is a lot. But this turnip is very likely to win first prize at the country fair. Trofim? Who is going to eat the turnip? I know, if only we'd grown it a little sooner. But it was my adversaries. They wouldn't believe in my theories. The Chinese communists also adopted his beliefs at the cost of the starvation of 30 million. We're not the Soviet Union, of course, nor are we ruled by Chinese communists. Not with that attitude. California lawmakers, thankfully, do not have the power currently being exercised in Shanghai. But this bill follows the same dangerous principle that government-authorised science should permit no opposition from people with the credentials and knowledge to oppose it. I think anyone should be able to oppose it. But if they've got the credentials and knowledge, these are great qualifications for opposition. The false medical consensus enforced by AB 2098 will lead doctors to censor themselves to avoid government sanction. And it will be their patients, above all, who will be harmed by their silence. All that, of course, from Jay Bhattacharya, Professor of Health at Stanford University School of Medicine, which was set up, I believe, by Alex Jones. So there you are. What principle are we protecting here? Free speech, open communication, not handing the state power that should be genuinely handled by experts. Don't mobilize and misuse scientific principles in order to create tyranny and oppression. Allow conversation. What can we as individuals all over the world do to protect those principles? We can honor them in our own lives. We can be observant when we see that they're being portrayed, and we have to absolutely stay awake. I say that that bill should be opposed, that no bills that are anything like it should ever be passed, that democracy should be in your hands. That is, after all, what democracy means. Anything else is a form of aristocracy, elite government where you have barely any influence, leads to oligarchy, leads to corruption. You've seen that now, you don't need me to tell you. Anyway, let me know what you think about this bill in the comments below. Are you in California? Have you heard of similar legislation? What would you oppose? Tell me. We have to learn from you. If you enjoyed this video and found it informative, why not pass it on to a friend and watch this one and this one? And if you don't subscribe yet, subscribe now. We need you. Now remember, I told you at the beginning, I'm doing a one-day event with Wim Hof. You could get tickets. There's only 1,000 tickets. Get on my mailing list right now. But more important than any of that is that you please stay free.